Our guest today is a very special guest. He is an expert in mindfulness and positive psychology. He is a frequent guest on Dr. Oz, and he is the author of a new book called Stop Missing Your Life. His name is Cory Muscara, and it is a pleasure to have him here. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, everyone. Even though I can't see you, it's good to be with you.
So, Cory, it's really great to have you. And I've known Cory for a lot of years. And by the way, if you get tired of the Long Island accent, it's because the two of us grew up one town away from each other. Yeah. But Cory, you have a very interesting background. Most of our guests speak primarily about mindfulness, but you seem to like really pull from a lot of different kind of traditions and strategies. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, part of that is because I was never really that interested in mindfulness or meditation. I think when a lot of people think of meditation teachers, they think they must be very spiritual or noble, or they got into this because they were really stressed. I started meditating because I was trying to impress a girl. I had a hippie girlfriend in college. She was in a meditation. I wanted her to think I was cool. I'm not proud of this. It was a very superficial undertaking, but it was trying to impress her that got me into it. And then I noticed all these things happen. My sleep improved, my focus improved, and I started becoming just happier. And a year later, I was in a monastery with a shaved head. And so I kind of took my type A personality into the meditation. And then after that extended 6-month meditation retreat, I came back into the world and I realized, like, wow, these practices are really powerful. They've transformed my life in so many ways, but they haven't fully taught me, how to navigate relationships. They didn't really teach me how to take care of my body. And there were a lot of like gaps in terms of just like well-being that I didn't feel like I learned purely through mindfulness and meditation. So that sort of inspired just looking at different modalities, from yoga to positive psychology to things like hypnosis, Tai Chi, trauma work, all kind of in pursuit of understanding what does it mean to live well, how to live a more fulfilling life.
So I just have to ask this before we go into the meditation. How did you go from, essentially breaking up with a girlfriend and like dabbling in mindfulness to, I'm going to shave my head, I'm going to go to Burma, and I'm going to train with one of the foremost meditation masters on planet Earth? How did you make that leap?
That's a good one. Good question. I tend to do things very fully and deeply, and like a lot of privileges at the time to be able to take 6 months off after college, defer student loans. So there were a lot of variables that went into that, but started with there's something interesting here. I'm doing it 15 minutes a day and it's going really well. That was in college. And then my mind quickly goes, if you're doing a 15 minutes a day, it's going this well, what would happen if you did 15 hours a day? And so I just got really interested in, what does it look like to meditate all day long? Where can I go to do that? I went on I just started asking questions. I talked to my meditation teacher in college. He said there's a retreat center in Massachusetts called Insight Meditation Society. I went there. I asked them about doing a longer retreat overseas. They said you should go to Burma, and there's this really amazing teacher you could study under named Sayadaw U Pandita. And that's kind of how I ended up there.
And that is a very, very rigorous technique. I know I've practiced in that for a while. It's very, very, it's not easy. Yeah. So can you actually walk us through some sort of meditation?
I'd love to. Yeah. So for those of you that have practiced before, we get to approach practice with what we might call beginner's mind, childlike curiosity, as if we're going through this the first time. So see if you can really embody that newness of the experience. And for those of you that are new to this, don't worry, I won't be hypnotizing you. You'll have full control over your mind. I'm just going to guide you through a short practice, and we'll see how it goes. It'll start by just finding a comfortable posture, which doesn't have to be anything fancy, something that feels grounded, upright, but not uptight. And if it's comfortable to close your eyes, you can. If you'd prefer to keep them open, let the gaze rest down toward the floor, you could do that as well. But if you do have technology with you other than the screen you're using, like your phone, maybe just putting that on airplane mode or to the side for the time being. It'll really help us go a little deeper. So I'll start by ringing a bell. And when I do, see if you can bring your full presence to the sound of the bell from the moment it begins all the way until that split second when it dissolves into silence. So we're just going to take the first few moments of this to settle in. Let's take a deep breath together in through the nose and slowly out through the mouth. Inviting the jaw to relax. The teeth don't need to be clenched right now. Letting the shoulders be at ease, as well as the hands and the belly. And so we're really settling into this relaxed, open awareness. A lot of times when we try to focus and concentrate and do, it creates tension and fast pace in the body. So here we're practicing keeping a high quality of awareness and presence, but at the same time inviting the body to be completely at ease. And there are a lot of different aspects of our experience that we can bring mindfulness to. One of them is just simply sound. So as you rest here, noticing anything that you can hear. And sometimes we might see the sound as a distraction to being mindful or present. Instead, use it as something that helps you be more mindful, as if whatever sound that's arising were just the song of this moment, the song that you're playing on your playlist. What would it be like to listen in that way? And so, sound is one way that we can cultivate more mindfulness of our experience. We could also do this with our thoughts. So, as you rest here right now, notice if there are any thoughts moving through your mind, whatever they may be. This is weird. I want to check my phone. I need to go to the bathroom. How much longer are we going to do this? And instead of getting so caught up in them, what would it be like to observe these thoughts similar to clouds passing through the sky, or as if you were listening to someone having a conversation in a coffee shop? And you're just getting familiar with what it's like to observe these thoughts rather than being so caught in them. As you see a thought arise, you can even have a relationship to it and just go, oh, hey, thought, nice to see you, thought. And then as it passes, goodbye, thought. And so see what it would be like to do that with a few of the thoughts that move through your mind. And lastly, we'll just bring our attention to the fact that we're breathing, that you're breathing. If you'd like, you can even place one hand on your abdomen to feel the body breathing a little more vividly. This is one area where we really get to train our focus, our presence. And so when the mind wanders off into thoughts, we're just gently escorting it back to focusing on the breath. It's sort of like a bicep curl for the brain. The weight of the thoughts pulls us away, we pull it back. Pulls us away, pull it back. And so each time we find the mind wandering, it's not a bad thing or a hindrance, it's an opportunity. It helps us develop focus, patience, self compassion. So see if you can view it in that way, coming back to the breath over and over and over. And before we close, we'll take a moment to reflect on two things. What is one thing you're grateful for about yourself? And then, what is one way that you feel like you could do a little better in how you show up in the world? Take time to reflect on each of those. One thing you're grateful for about yourself, and one way you think you could do a little better. And in a moment, I will ring the bells 3 times. When I do, just bring the same quality of presence and awareness to the sound until the third bell dissolves back into silence.
That was great. That was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your practice.
It's, you opened very similar how when I lead meditation, I often direct toward listening first. And you said a playlist. I usually call it the soundtrack of life.
Oh,
It's like
cool.
when we listen to music, sometimes we might hear one instrument and then the vocals, and then punctuated by a moment of silence, and then they merge together in like a symphony.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you were instructing us, when we're in the moment, it's like life is orchestrating itself. I mean, just like a song, like you were saying.
Yeah. Well, there's also that Ajahn Chah quote. There's this teacher from Thailand, and he would say on retreat, sound is not trying to distract or annoy me. It's just doing what it does, which is to make sound. If I don't bother it, it won't bother me. And so, we're taking in, assuming that we have the capacity to hear, whatever degree we have that, we're taking in a lot of stimulation through sound. A lot of times we could perceive that as an enemy to our presence. But, as you're saying, and with your music background, I think you can appreciate this much more than anyone. It's just like, what if we just perceived it as like a symphony, and like, oh, this is what I'm experiencing right now. It reframes the meaning of the experience and allows us to be with it in a different way.
Right. And when we're not mindful, we're subtly pushing some things away and pulling other things closer. And
Yeah.
often we're caught in the grip of this pushing and pulling and not even knowing that it's happening.
Yeah, exactly. I like to call that the cycle of push pull, where if you think about going to the gym, that's what we're doing, pushing some weight in that direction or our body, and then pulling close to us, pushing, pulling, pushing, pulling. But you wouldn't go to the gym 24 hours a day; your body would break down. If you look at the mind and how it's usually relating to experience, it's constantly engaged in this push pull, pushing what I don't want, pulling what I do want, pushing, pulling, pushing, pulling. And it can be absolutely exhausting, especially if we've never awoken to the idea that we're doing that. And it doesn't mean that we just passively resign to life. Like, there are times where it really serves us to be pushing against what is here. But there's also a way to meet the reality of what's here, sort of settle ourselves into it and go, you know what, I actually don't like this, and I'm going to choose to do something to take action against it. But that can be done with a little less tension in the body than I think we're used to. And so one thing I've been kind of talking about is just, what is it like to do everything you need to do in your life right now, everything that's meaningful to you, but with a bit more of a relaxed awareness. The conversations you need to have, the emails you need to send, the things you need to do. But can that be done without this kind of tension? Can it be done with a little bit more ease? That's an exploration we get to have for ourselves. Maybe not. But I often find that it doesn't take as much gripping in my body and my mind to do the things that are most important to me.
And we know that there are things happening not only inside of us, but in the world right now. I mean, there are unprecedented protests. There's civil unrest unfolding in every city in America. So when you and I spoke about you coming on the show, the theme I thought we were going to use was the name of your book, Stop Missing Your Life. And you were really insistent that you wanted the theme to be permission to be human.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to speak a little bit about that. And I polled the kids because I wanted to see where they stood on a lot of these issues. So here's what we learned. This is kind of the ground that we're speaking to. The question was asked, what aspect of being human is the most difficult for you? 26.7% said difficult emotions, not surprisingly. Another 27% said finding purpose in life. 20% said relationships. Another 20 said grief, loss, and change. And 6.7% said physical pain.
Wow.
Do you believe that you have experienced trauma in life? 57.1, yes. 28.6% no. 14.3% unsure. Do you feel that you push your emotions away without processing them? 64.7% yes. Roughly 29.4% unsure. And only 5.9% said a flat out no. Do you accept your own imperfections? 27% always. 27% sometimes. 27% rarely, and 13.3%, I beat myself up most of the time.
Mm.
I don't think these numbers are surprising you. I mean, meeting with people in meditation. And what I wanted to do was find out in their own voice, how do you deal with your own imperfections? What are your specific strategies? So this is the voice of the kids right now.
Great.
A sampling. I accept them and tell myself no one's perfect. I work on them. I don't. I try to pretend like they're not there. Sometimes I have to change my persona. I try to embrace them. I talk to my close friends. We all have imperfections and they make us who we are, so I don't really pay mind to them. I let myself know that it is okay to make mistakes without rushing it. I talk to my teacher. I don't. I just shove it down. And I think we can all relate to that. So this is what we're speaking to right now. So what has your work taught you about being human and dealing with your own imperfections? Because a student asked that. How do you deal with your imperfections?
Right. Yeah. Well, first, just a big acknowledgement to all the shares and even the vulnerability to talk about it in a survey. I mean, these are big things we're talking about, our inner landscape, and even just the ability to acknowledge I don't acknowledge my emotions or I don't acknowledge my experience is an acknowledgement of the experience,
right,
to an extent. So I think that's a big thing to name. And, kind of serves as a segue for me into how I explore it for myself. When I have a lot of areas where I have that defensiveness, or I don't want to feel something, or it feels just easier to numb or shut down or think about something else. And the first thing I do is not add another level of beating myself up for that. I acknowledge just that, like, there are a lot of things that are uncomfortable, that are painful, that I don't want to feel, and it's normal because it's difficult. And so, like, just starting from that place of like, who would want to feel something difficult, and that most people would feel that way, helps me go, okay, it's okay to have this experience. And the part of me that is defensive, that does want to suppress, it's like, yeah, I see you, I understand this is uncomfortable. So I try to create a relationship with that part of me, that might not be giving myself permission to have the experience that I'm having, and say like, hey, what's going on here? Like, why is this not something maybe we want to feel right now? And maybe the response is like, well, it's really uncomfortable, it's painful, it's stupid, like that person should apologize, not me. And so maybe that resonates with people too. And so, being able to talk to that part of myself, and you might be going like, what does it mean to talk to that part of myself? If you experience anger, one thing that you could do is like close your eyes and feel the anger, and have a conversation with it as if it were another person that you were sitting on a park bench with, and just go like, hey, anger, like, what's going on? What do you need right now? Where are you coming from? And the anger will say like, I don't want to do this. This is weird. I don't like this. I don't like what this person said. It's like, yeah, no, I get that. It is kind of uncomfortable. It's okay. Like, we don't have to do it right now. Let's just stay in that space of anger for a moment. And usually what happens by creating a space for that emotion, that experience to be felt, seen, heard, and not feel like we're beating it down, it starts to go away. It starts to soften or transform into something that is a little less abrasive in our system. So for me, it all starts with just this global understanding that being human is complex. We all have a series of difficult thoughts, emotions. There's no experience that you could be experiencing now or ever that no other human has experienced before. And so just that understanding, because we're tribal creatures, we want to fit in. When we feel like we're going through something alone and nobody else has experienced it, it feels painful. We feel isolated. We feel something is wrong with me. So starting with the understanding that everyone has gone through whatever I'm experiencing right now in some form, even if I don't see them in my life, allows us to feel a little bit more open to the recognition that, okay, this is part of being human. And then just trying to create a friendship with yourself. Like, what do we need right now? How's it going? And you talk to yourself in that way. You can, like, hey, Cory, it seems like you're a little edgy today. Hey, it seems like you're a little defensive. Hey, it seems like you're a little mad. Do you need something? Or are we not addressing something? Do we need to have a conversation with someone? And that friendship with yourself, you have to go through this life alone. You can have great support, great friends, great communities, and that's so important. But at the end of the day, we have to experience our thoughts, our emotions, our pains, and our sickness. And so if we're not developing that friendship with ourselves, it ends up being a really bumpy road. Yeah. So those would be two key things that I do, recognizing the common humanity and starting to develop a friendship with myself.
And you're right what you said earlier. There's not only a vulnerability, but a deep candor that our students have. So when you said that, everybody has these experiences, I'm assuming the context for this following question came out of what's going on in the world right now. An 11th grader asked the question, and I'm assuming this question comes at me as much as it does you. I'm guessing life is a lot easier for you than me. How can your advice help me when you can't relate to my life or problems?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been asking that question a lot over the years, and especially more recently. In the context of just like, and you and me being white men, there are realities, traumas, pains that we don't experience going through the world, and there's not for a moment would I want to pretend that I know what that experience is like. And so one thing that I try to help other people do, and one thing that I do know for myself and through this training, is how to help people create spaces for them to feel what they're feeling, and not get so sucked into it in a disempowering way. So when we're talking about this work and my teachings specifically and Brian's teachings, it's important to remember that this is not about telling you how to live your life, what you should do, what you should be thinking, how you should be feeling, or even like a roadmap for like, do this and you'll be successful. It's much more about creating a space for you to go inside and start to understand yourself, your own needs, your own pains, your own strengths, your own joys, and learn for yourself through that awareness and through that practice, of what is your authentic self, what is your authentic voice, and what do you need to continue to show up day by day. And so my hope through this work, and anyone engaged in this work, and anyone that is really feeling the pain of what's going on in our world right now, and potentially has been for their entire lives, my hope is that you can really start to develop an empowered relationship to yourself, to one, let yourself off the hook for trying to make this world better right now. That has much more to do with people like me, or people that are potentially subconsciously reinforcing a system that is making life more difficult, for people like you. So giving yourself permission to rest, if it just feels like this is such a big battle right now, and simultaneously developing that relationship with yourself that allows you to continue to show up each day, in a way that feels right to you and authentic to you. And so even though I might not have the same experience to you, my experience is in helping humans cultivate their own inner wisdom and their own inner strength.
So when we asked the kids what aspect of being human is the most difficult for you, and we got almost 28% said finding their purpose in life. What you're speaking to is part and parcel of finding your purpose in life. And this is much more difficult when you're younger, right? You have you have to figure out, who am I? What am I going to become in the world? How am I going to get there? What obstacles? And the truth is, you just haven't proven many of these things yet. So it's just a big, big question mark, right? For someone like me or you or someone a little bit older, we've already had some victories. So we kind of have tasted that at this point. But when you're young, it's all to be determined.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying with the permission to be human is not so much that we're going to practice this mindfulness to transcend or get beyond these difficult emotions, right? We want to see them as they are, right? You have difficult emotions, right? You haven't meditated past them, correct?
Correct.
Right. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so like, I think what's powerful is, one, So a couple things, like the acknowledgement that these emotions are going to be here, these discomforts, these confusions are going to be here. When I think for myself, like the biggest transformational points in my life, like when things shifted positively, all of those moments or experiences were preceded by great amounts of discomfort and pain. And we're seeing it right now with our country. There's extreme amounts of pain, defensiveness, confusion, upheaval, and it's slowly transforming things for the better. It's waking people up. And so I would, for those that are confused right now, and I get it, like being in high school, I would, no offense, I just wouldn't want to go back to high school because I just had no sense of what I was doing, where I was going. It was a really confusing period of my life. So I would start by just looking back to where have there been some moments in your life already that you have been confused, uncertain, not sure what to do? And then see, how did you overcome them? What happened? What shifted? How long did the difficult experience last? That will just start to remind your brain that, hey, like uncomfortable experiences often lead to some form of growth and transformation. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And so then using that discomfort, the fear, the not knowing what's arising, not so much as a way to completely overwhelm you, but once you're present to it, it gives you enough space to say, okay, this is here. How do I want to relate to it? And how can I maybe use it as a form of positive transformation? How can I use it as a form of fuel, whether it's anger, sadness, despair, confusion? That's energy in the body. And it can be used to push us down, or it can be used to continue to pull us up and outwardly. So I would feel that. Take some time. Like if it's anger, if it's grief, if it's sadness, if it's overwhelm, hold it, contain it, and then go, okay, this is showing me that something needs to shift. What needs to shift? And can I start to funnel this energy in that direction?
So we had,
And, yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just say, and just the thing with the purpose and finding your purpose, the research shows that hardly 20% of people even know like what their passion is coming out of high school and coming out of college. I don't even know if I'm doing like what my main purpose is in this life. All I know is I kind of like what I'm doing and I'm trying to do more of that. I think we end up creating more anxiety for ourselves trying to pin down what is my life's purpose, when really the only thing you can do in each moment is just ask yourself, like, what do I like right now? What's interesting to me right now? And can I try to do something that's maybe more aligned with it? Sometimes we don't always have to. Like sometimes we need to make money. And so that might mean just like, all right, I have to get this job for the time being. But continue to ask the question for yourself of like, what do I like doing? And can I start to see opportunities to do more of that, to bring in my strengths? And then one day we wake up and we're like, oh, I actually feel more aligned with my purpose. But the idea that it's just going to be this thing that we uncover and now I have it and it's fixed for the rest of our life is mostly a myth, and ends up creating more anxiety and pressure for us.
And added to what do I like, what are my values? Because if I
Yeah.
can marry what I like with my values, like I'm going to just guess here because I know you, that your values, you want to help people. So you like this kind of work, and your value is that you want to help people. So when you marry those two things together, it's like really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And also, we had John Kabat-Zinn on the show, and we had a senior named Dakota, and she was really struggling with, they're not going to have a physical graduation ceremony. So like, how do I actually transition? What I hear you saying in your answer is, and we were talking about this that day, is that you get to decide what the meaning is of an event.
Mm.
So even though historically you would have a graduation ceremony as a rite of passage to get from point A to point B, when that's now removed, you can take the very situation, the pain, like you said in your life, all of your biggest growth points were preceded by a lot of pain. You can look at the pain that we're all in now and say, you know what? I will redefine this pain, and I will turn this into my greatest growth ever. So is there science that says that if you change the meaning of an event, you can actually change what comes as a result of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it is like specific or related to just basic cognitive behavioral therapy. And so there's a model within CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy and positive psychology, called the ABC model. And it speaks directly to what you're talking about. So it's an acronym, and A stands for activating event, B stands for belief, and C stands for consequence. So in this scenario, the activating event is I'm not going to get to go to graduation. The B, the belief of that is I'm not getting the experience that I was supposed to get. The consequence of that is I feel sad, I feel upset, I feel like, man, what a waste, right? So the thing with these scenarios is you really don't have influence over the activating event in general, because life is just going to come at us as it does. You don't have much of control over the consequence of it once that happens. What you do have control over is the belief, how you're thinking about the experience. So we go through this again, just with a different belief. Activating event, not going to go through graduation. Belief was, I'm missing out on something. New potential belief of like, wow, I'm part of a class that is going through something different than any other class has gone through in decades. There's definitely going to be some new form of resilience that comes out of this that I'm not aware of yet. And a new kind of connection with all these people around the country who are also in the same position that I'll be able to talk about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Whoa, different belief. Now the consequence becomes, I actually feel a little bit more empowered through this situation. Now, we don't want to use this to just mask over all of our pain, because sometimes it's important to feel like the grief of releasing something. But if we're in a place where it's like, okay, I've given myself enough time to be sad about this, upset, and I'm ready to move on, focus on the belief you have about the situation. Try to change it with a more empowering belief, and notice how what you feel ends up being different. So that's the ABC model, working with the B.
So what you're talking about is not like what's usually emphasized in mindfulness is just pay attention to your thoughts. You're saying actually go in there and like change some of them and really reconfigure.
Yeah. So it's, you need an awareness to do the ABC model. You need to be aware of like, what is my belief about this situation? And it happens, it happens in the most subtle ways. Like today, it happened to me. I didn't get as much sleep in the morning. So I woke up and I felt a little groggy. So the grogginess is the activating event. The belief that comes up is, oh man, I have to do a call with Brian later. I'm going to be groggy. It's not going to go well. And I already have this, the consequence is just like, man, I start ruminating in a negative way. Change the belief, and the belief could just simply be, actually, I don't know how the rest of the day is going to go. Let me take a cold shower. There's probably some things I can do to wake myself up, and I'll get more sleep tonight. And so just like a different belief about the situation or what could happen changes how I feel. And so this can be applied into our mindfulness practice as we're aware of what's going on in our life, especially when we feel something uncomfortable. It's usually because we have a belief about a situation. Not always. Sometimes those things just arise, but it is one way that we can start to figure out what our beliefs are.
One thing I've noticed as a mindfulness teacher, and I don't even refer so much in school, but outside of school when I'm teaching to adults in Manhattan, and like there are big groups and all of this, on days when I feel the way you feel and feel really, really run down, or I'm not up to it, and I have that thought in the head, but I get up there and I fully own it. I fully feel like crap. It seems like 100% of the time my teaching becomes better because I seem a little more either vulnerable or connected, and I'm able to connect to the people a little more authentically. Have you noticed that?
Totally. Yeah. And that's because in my opinion is connection happens through that vulnerability and relating in an honest way to our own experience, not in spite of it. And so that's often what we perceive when it comes to connection and relationships with another person. We feel like, okay, well, I'm not going to tell them about like the bad day or the difficult conversation I had with my mother this morning because they'll think less of me. And so we try to like push that aside. But the real connection comes when we've given another person permission to be themselves, because everyone is looking for that permission on the deepest level. That's when we feel most whole. It's why, falling in love or falling into a relationship and it feels so good. It's like, wow, I could be myself with this person. And so how do we create that space for another person? We create it by doing it for ourselves first and modeling it to them of like, wow, you know what? Today I'm actually really tired. Today I'm not feeling great. Today I'm going through something difficult. And the other person who felt like, oh, I have to be perfect, or the audience that feels like, oh, I have to be really present and mindful, they get a chance to go, oh, so this isn't about being perfect. I can have more permission to be myself as well. So I think it's a beautiful modeling of the practice itself for other people. And then it's something we could bring into relationships, into our families, and into our work and school.
Right, because if you're concealing your own imperfections, you're breaking the connection with the other people. But when they see you owning it, yeah. So Kayla is a 12th grader. She's a really great kid. She would come into what I call my mindful fitness class. I created this many years ago, and she would come in and be like, "Simmons, I'm stressed. Make it go away. Let's do meditation or whatever." So she asked the question, how can I overcome stress? So what practical tips do we have for her, Cory?
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to give like really practical ones here. Um, well, let's start with just like one definition of stress: when your perceived demands are greater than your perceived resources to meet those demands. And so a lot of the key word there is perceived. Often what we perceive to be demanding is very different than what's actually demanding. So like even when you're in the shower in the morning, a lot of times you're not in the shower because your mind is someplace else. You're already taking care of your work, your to-dos. And so nobody has the resources to be able to do all of that in one moment. But you drop your attention on what is actually going on right now. Just standing in the shower, just rubbing soap on your body, just shampooing your hair. Most of us have the resources to be able to do that. And so by dropping a little bit more intimately into the present moment, it's not denying the reality of the world. It's just showing us, okay, in this moment, with all of that going on, the actual immediate experiences, I'm just sitting here. There's a roof over my head that I can perceive. Maybe I feel relatively well fed, have a water bottle here. I can feel my hands on my lap. That just starts to ground us. There are some tools, though, that we can use to get into that space more quickly. One of them is an exercise called Take 5, which we could do together. So take out your left hand like this. Have you guys done this before, Brian?
No, we haven't done this.
Okay, cool. So take your left hand like you're holding a pizza pie, and then take your right pointer finger and place it in the palm of your hand right around your wrist. So what you're going to do is slide the pointer finger up the thumb, taking an inhale through the nose. So sliding up, inhale. Slide back down, exhale through the mouth. Up the pointer finger, inhale. Back down, exhale. Up the middle finger, inhale. Back down. Up the ring. Back down. And up the pinky. Back down. Cool. So that's take 5. Very simple. Doesn't take more than about 30 seconds to do. And there's something about the tactile nature of that exercise, of like feeling the finger and then aligning it with the breath, that really seems to be settling for the mind and the nervous system. This is something I teach to students in schools, and it's one of the things that catches the quickest. And students do it before an exam, when they're feeling stressed out, before an athletic performance, musical performance, when they're at home. It can just be applied to so many moments of your life. Now, is it going to radically change your life to pet your pinky every time you're stressed out? No, but what I think it can do is reground us like 5 to 10% more than we were before. And if we do that over time, it really has good long-term implications. So that's one simple strategy you can do in those moments where you're starting to feel a little tense. Another is more of a cognitive hack, you could say. And so this is switching your what if to what is. A lot of time, the stress that's being created is coming from the what if mind. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if this doesn't go well? What if they don't like me? What if? Again, sometimes the what if mind, as you can imagine, is useful. It helps us make change. It helps us prepare for the future. But a lot of times, maybe you've noticed, the what if mind just creates extra stress and extra overwhelm. And it's just because the mind is all over the place. So when you notice yourself caught up in the what if, the encouragement is to shift into what is. And so that's something we could do all right now. If we just shift into like what is here that we can perceive right in this moment. We're just looking at each other. We might be sitting, we might be standing. For me, I feel some ease in my shoulders, feel my hands on my lap. Once I start dropping into like the what is of this moment, the actual basic elements of what I can experience, usually what I see is the moment is a little less of a catastrophe than my mind is making it out to be. Not always. Sometimes the mind is accurately representing the reality of our life. But often what is the case is the mind has this tendency to double, triple, quadruple the suffering of a difficult experience, because it's thinking about all the ways that this is going to last for 6 months, 5 years, or go on, or we have something difficult on Wednesday evening and it's Monday morning, but we don't just suffer Wednesday evening, we suffer Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Tuesday evening, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning. So as humans, we have this amazing ability to think about the future and plan and create. Very few animals, if any, have that ability. It allows us to have great imagination. But with that also comes this ability to think about everything that could go wrong and everything that is wrong. And so we just want to manage that when that arises and we get caught up in the what if. Can I also just hold the what is in this moment? Another way to just drop us down into what's here right now.
And they're both very much related, because when you did the Take 5 exercise, what you're really doing is you're connecting into what is, because if the hand is here, we're touching the hand, we're feeling the breathing. And while those two things are happening, we're actually taking the attention out of the thinking and the ruminating into what's actually happening. So even though you say it may not change our entire life, but in this moment it does, because that's a space that we need, right? That's what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all like so many of these mindfulness techniques that seem different are kind of just taking us into the same room, which is this capacity to just be a little bit more attuned to this moment of our life without being so overwhelmed or caught in the thoughts, the judgments, the ideas about it.
And a really powerful room is our body, because when we're grounded inside our physical body, even just walking and feeling the ground or breathing or touching our hand, it connects us in a fundamental way, and it's always here for us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's the that Kabir. So Kabir was this Turkish poet, I think, and he says at the end of one of his poems, "Let go of all thoughts of imaginary things and stand firm in that which you are," which I always loved. And it's not to discredit the thoughts going on in our mind. They're not always imaginary things. But what he's pointing to is the thoughts can take us in a million different directions and create a million different realities for us. But the body is always here. There's something fundamentally grounded about the body. And when we come back to it, just feeling the feet on the ground or a butt in the chair or standing in ourselves, that's not in the future. It's not in the past. It's right here. So it's a quick way and an always accessible way to drop in.
So we have Maria here. She's a student at Food and Finance High School, and she has some questions for you, Cory. So Maria, you can unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Hey, Maria. Good to see you.
Hello. Hi. So I have 3 questions, right? So the first one was, how is science involved in the meditation? For example, how do we make our brain relax itself with all the things that are going on? We are so overwhelmed with everything going on right now. So how can we personally relax ourselves without the impulse?
Yeah, right. Great question. Yeah, so just like related to the science, a lot of that that tension we feel, I kind of like saw it in your body, Maria, when you said like without doing this, a lot of that's coming from a more primal part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's the alarm system that goes off when something goes off and we feel that tension in the body. It's just rushing all of these chemicals and hormones that's saying we need to be on high alert. And a lot of us can spend much of our lives in that state. One of the things that the meditation practice does, things like Take 5, shifting what if to what is, just focusing on the breath in this moment, is it trains the brain to engage different areas of it and not be so consumed by that amygdala. This happens over time, but if people did like Take 5 3 times a day, every time they feel themselves caught in the amygdala, one of the things it helps to do is just bring on different parts of the brain that are more responsible for feeling grounded, more responsible for feeling at ease. And so that's some of what like the neuroscience has to say about that.
And just to jump in, Maria, we have a neuroscientist, Dr. Judson Brewer, who's going to be the guest next week. We're going to get very specific into this. Sorry.
Yeah, Judd is a lot smarter than me when it comes to the brain.
Another question I had was, you mentioned before how you, ever since you started meditating, like on a daily and stuff, your sleep got better, just everything got better in yourself, right? How can us as younger students going on into all this thrown stuff, how can we also add that into our lives starting now?
Yeah. I think w- with this, Maria, the a lot of us kind of know, the idea of meditation. We know it's good for us. But it can just be hard to put it into practice. We don't know how long we should be doing it. When should I be doing it? What kind of practice should I be doing? So I want to give anyone that's listening that kind of wants to get started on this and experience the benefits a very simple way to think about it. And it's 100 breaths for 100 days. So what does this look like? You sit down and you just do awareness of breath meditation. Feel the inhale, feel the exhale. And if you feel that fully, then you just count 1. Then you do another breath, then count 2. Another breath, you count 3. And you're just trying to get up to 100. Now, the mind will probably wander after like 4 or 5 breaths. It doesn't mean you have to start back at 1 because that would take a very long time. The goal is just to, during the time that you're sitting or lying down meditating, see if you can count 100 breaths. Be aware of 100 breaths. That typically takes about 10 to 14 minutes. So it's a decent chunk of time, but long enough to start to experience benefits. And if you do that over 100 days, which is a little over 3 months, you'll really start to notice the benefits of the practice: greater focus, greater ease, greater self-regulation, and improved sleep. So my encouragement for anyone that wants to get going is just start with 100 breaths for 100 days and then take it from there.
Thank you so much. And finally, my last question. Personally, whenever I overwork myself or just overwhelm myself in general, I fall asleep right away. It's just something that hits me. Some days I'm not sleepy at all and I'm just wide awake. And I'm like, why can't I sleep? And why am I so stressed? And I'm just, child. So what else besides those, the breathing exercise and all that stuff, what else can we do in order for us to sleep peacefully without our head hurting really, really bad?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of things. I really try to take good care of my sleep. It's very important to me. And so one thing I've tried to do more recently is 30 to 60 minutes before I go to bed. If I can, I get off of my screen. So the blue light from our screen is one way that really keeps us up. So turning that off or putting it on low tone mode. I think it's on an iPhone where there's an app called Flux that you could download that takes away the blue light. And I try to just really relax my body at least 30 to 60 minutes before going to bed. Sometimes that looks like just laying down in my living room and put my hand on my heart and my hand on my belly and breathe deeply. And to make it really practical, the breathing pattern that helps me the most with that relaxation is the 4-7-8 breathing pattern, where we could all do it together for a moment. So let's breathe in for 4. I'll tell you, we breathe in for 4, hold it for 7, and then exhale for 8 seconds. So we'll all do it. So breathing in for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow breathe out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's the 4-7-8 breath. It's very useful for relaxing the body. And one way that we can slow down the breath is because sometimes it's really hard to elongate it for 8 seconds, is you imagine like you're blowing hot air on a cold window like this, and then just close the mouth. So it'll sound like this. Like that. And so that'll help slow down the breath. Doing that before you fall asleep is a really helpful way to settle the nervous system going to bed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maria. Great questions.
I can't wait to read your new upcoming books and stuff on the website.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Great questions, Maria. Great questions. One thing I do is I refuse to look at the alarm clock if I wake up in the middle of the night. Because I know if I look at the alarm clock, it's going to trigger a cascade of thoughts.
Yes.
So that's a case of like strategic ignorance.
Yes.
I don't want to know, like it could be, I could have 8 hours left. I could have 2 hours left. Let me not know in this moment. Sometimes it's good not to know, right? Yeah,
exactly. Totally. Especially if it's not going to serve you in any way. If you know the alarm clock's going to go off at some point, then just go back to bed.
And speaking of not knowing, we have a 12th grader ask the question, and I love it. Oh, I love this question. It comes up so often, but no one ever directly asks it this way. Sometimes the present moment sucks. Why should I want to be in it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So The first chapter of my book is titled "Being Human is Hard," and it directly speaks to this, that life has a lot of discomfort, life has a lot of pain, and so why would we want to be present to it at all? And to me, that's sometimes a lacking narrative in the mindfulness space, which is like it's just sort of assumed like being present for the sake of being present is good. But a lot of us know that being present often can make us have to see things that are very uncomfortable, very painful,
Yep.
and stressful, and it can feel easier to turn away from it, to numb to it, or self-medicate. And so I get it. It's a great question, and I've tried to address it in a big way in the book. My argument at this stage is you get to explore for yourself. Like if these uncomfortable things arise, notice what your different coping mechanisms are for them. One of them might be like, I don't want to deal with this right now, so I'm gonna numb and shut down. Cool. You know you have that as a strategy. We all have different strategies. However, start to also notice what are the long-term implications of that. Because what I see with a lot of people that have spent their lives doing that around stress, discomfort, pain, grief, they end up coming to a mindfulness class 20, 30, 40 years later, and they just feel shut down. They feel numb. They're not able to experience joy, goodness, pleasure. And the unfortunate reality is that, with the nervous system, it's not like there's just a place to experience good and then a place to experience bad. And so we could shut down the bad and just still access the good. It's a feeling organism. And so if we shut down to feeling the bad or numb out to it too long, it's also going to shut us out to the good stuff. And so, that's a choice we have to make. Do we want to be numb but not have to feel the discomfort? Or do we want to live a more full, rich, embodied life where we get to experience a full range of what it means to be human? The thing with the mindfulness practice, though, is it's not just that it opens us up to the pain and now we have to experience this heart-wrenching pain all the time in order to experience the good, is it simultaneously is building up the inner resources to be present to the pain, but in a way that's not causing so much extra stress, so much extra suffering. And so that's, where we get into primary pain versus secondary pain. Primary pain are those realities of life that we just can't control, difficult things that are going to arise regardless of whether we want them to or not. Secondary pain are the thoughts, the judgments, the emotions that we cake on top of it. Why me? Why did God do this to me? How am I going to be able to go on? Nobody else is struggling. When we're not mindful, usually we're caught up in the secondary pain and it's making us suffer even more. When we are mindful, we can experience the discomfort of it and go, wow, this does suck. I don't like this. However, we don't have to cake it on with another level of suffering. So yeah, that's the best response I have to you at this point. But at the heart of it is we kind of have to explore this for ourselves and see what is the life we want to live.
And I agree with what you're saying about the narrative about mindfulness in the present moment. I mean, I created a whole course once called What's So Great About the Present Moment.
That's
because
great.
I think that there's a total misconception in society and the media that if you are in the present moment, things are going to be awesome. I mean, it's true. Your food might taste like really intense and more vivid, but what if I don't like the food that I'm eating? It's only going to be more intense. Where what I hear you saying and what my experience of mindfulness is that it's not going to necessarily make things great, but it's going to give me clarity. Mm-hmm. And when I'm clear, I can navigate through things that aren't so great more effectively. And as a side benefit, yes, I might enjoy the sunset or I might enjoy the meal, but that's not the primary purpose. Clarity is more about the primary purpose. Is that right?
Yeah. I wrote a post recently. I think that gets to this, that meditation is not about feeling good. It's about feeling what you're feeling with good awareness. But plot twist, that ends up making you feeling good. So there's something like by not trying to feel good constantly, we end up in a strange way feeling more peaceful, more grounded, and better in our life.
I know we're running out of time, but I just have a couple quick questions that are really good. One says, I'm a perfectionist and it's very stressful. How do you stop feeling that everything has to be perfect?
Yeah. Well, the book I would recommend, and not to just like dismiss the question, but is called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz, where he talks about these levels of we can either be like perfectionists, maximizers, or satisficers. And the maximizer perfectionist is the person that constantly needs everything to be good. Like if you go to Old Navy to get a pair of jeans and there are 20 different options, it makes us like not be able to choose. And so like if we're perfectionists, we go, okay, well, I'm going to go to this other store and find one that's even cheaper and even better than these. And we drive ourselves crazy. And this can happen in all aspects of our life. So the key to actually moving toward a little bit more well-being is satisficing, seeing like, okay, there are a lot of different ways I could express right now. I could always get a little bit better for this particular context. Where I'm at right now is good enough, and let me now put my energy towards something else. So the book will go more into that, or you could even Google the cliff notes of it. But it's called The Paradox of Choice. And it just points to how constantly needing everything to be better or more is a form of tyranny against the mind as you're experiencing. And we want to move more to a place of being able to satisfy with the moment.
And those thinking habits activate the amygdala that you were talking about before in the nervous system. If you're not aware that you're constantly looking for something greater, it's putting you in fight or flight response, where you're completely having a stress response to life and not knowing it. Yeah,
exactly.
I think I know the answer to this question, but someone asked, has meditation helped build confidence in yourself?
Yeah, but it's a different kind of confidence than I think many of us think of. I often talk about the paradox of invincibility that meditation gives us, where it does over time kind of give a sense of invincibility, but it's not the like pump yourself up, I don't feel pain sort of mental toughness that we usually think about. It's this deep groundedness within your being that you can meet and get through whatever arises. Because if you think about the meditation, what it's training you to do is be present and grounded in all of the different thoughts that could arise, all of the different emotions, and all of the different sensations. Well, if you look at any difficult moment of your life, whether it's a breakup, loss of a loved one, a job loss, all of that is just a conglomeration of different thoughts, different emotions, and different sensations. So the more that you train your ability to be with all of those different experiences in your meditation, the better equipped you are to meet them when they show up in real life. And in that way, we develop this sense of, oh, like I can get through a lot. Doesn't mean I'm going to like it. Doesn't mean we don't feel any pain, but we know we can meet the pain and get through it. And so that's the kind of confidence it's given me in my own life. Not so much that like, oh, Cory's is the greatest thing ever, but more like, whoa, I know life can get tough, and I know the rug will probably get ripped out from beneath me at some point, but I know I have the inner resources to navigate that.
Which is different from what I hear you saying, and I kind of experienced this myself, having confidence in a fixed identity of who I am. That's kind of like, I probably had like a good degree of confidence that even prior to meditation, but meditating, I was like, that's a very unstable confidence, because if that image of myself is in some way threatened, then what happens to the confidence versus the confidence of no matter what happens, there is a way to be with it and to navigate through it. That seems to be an enduring confidence, right?
Yes, it's much less fragile. And so if our confidence is built on like, okay, I get really good grades, or I'm going to this college, or I have this friend group, then the confidence only exists within those puzzle pieces being arranged in a particular way. But if something happens with the friend group, something happens with the college, something happens with the job, then we're lost. And so that's why it's fragile. The kind of confidence we're developing in this practice is, as you're saying, Brian, the ability to move fluidly with the constantly changing landscape of our life.
This hour flew. It flew. And I know you always have like a lot of tricks in your bag, and you gave us a bunch of them. So before we end, is there anything else you want to say or share with us, or anything you'd like to close with?
Yeah, I always like to have lots of free resources for people. I have a daily podcast called Practicing Human. It's 5 to 15 minute little snippets each day that you could listen to, kind of like a shower for your mind. And I send out these daily like inspirational texts every day, and like an audio message or a video. It's part of this like texting community. If you want to be part of that, you could just text mindfulness to 631-305-2874. Again, that's totally free. Just a way to continue to keep these ideas at the forefront of your mind. So that's 631-305-2874. Sounds like an infomercial. But yeah, I post a lot on Instagram, Facebook. Those are areas to follow along. And I just want to say, like, I'm so grateful you all are showing up and doing this work. I know this is a painful time with the pandemic and what we're experiencing right now within our country. And I appreciate you continuing to show up, and that you have these resources is so powerful. I wish I had them in high school. You're doing great. And thank you for doing this work, because it's not just for you, it's for your friends, your family, your community, and our world at large. So it's big work, and we're in it together. So thanks so much for having me and for your presence.
Cory, it was great. I feel like you and I just had a conversation that we've had many times in the past. The only difference is this time people are listening to it. So it was really just a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.